and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. It has been a while since I gave you guys a health update. For those of you who don't know, I do have a more than likely benign brain tumor known as a pituitary adenoma, and it has taken the eyesight from my right eye. I only have 14% functional vision and the rest of my eyesight is just pitch black. And because of this, I have been working with an ophthalmologist here in Maine. However, the plan that started months and months ago was to eventually get me to Boston, and that is what this video is going to be. It is currently the day before. It is October 8th right now, and I go to Boston bright and early tomorrow morning. We are taking the train, and I figured now would be the perfect time for me to sit down and do my intro and outro and just talk a little bit before I get into the big health update and talk about how my appointment went. If you guys have missed any of my past tumor-related videos, I will go ahead and leave a playlist down below. And without further ado, let's get started. So just as a little summary to catch everyone up if you are new, on December 20th of 2022, which just so happened to be my 28th birthday, I went in for an MRI because my doctor suspected that I could have a possible tumor, but we weren't entirely sure. And sure enough, later that night, just as I was sitting down to cut my cake, I got a notification on my portal that they in fact did find a tumor. So that was how I spent my 28th birthday. Shortly after that, I started a medication called Coherence, which was an entire journey in itself. I'm actually still on the medication and I've tried a few others as well. All my medication journeys are linked in the playlist down below, as well as in January or February after my initial diagnosis, I noticed that my vision started getting really bad, specifically in my right eye. My left eye is absolutely perfect, other than the fact that we have to correct my vision for distance, which is something that is obviously correctable with lenses. However, my right eye, slowly it has just been like someone putting their hand up slowly over your eye, and at this point all I have is a little bit of vision down in my lower corner, and on all of my testing it shows up as only having 14% vision in this eye. And remember, this all started back in February of 2023 with the vision loss. I originally was seeing my regular optometrist. I was seeing him like every other month, and finally he referred me to a comprehensive ophthalmologist, and I began seeing her about 14 months ago, and working with her has been amazing. She is fantastic. She is on her game about everything, and she worked with me. She saw me every 3 months. We have been keeping an eye on the progression of the vision loss. I have regular vision testing for it, and over 6 months ago, she decided that the best place for me to be for this was in Boston to see a neuro-ophthalmologist, because there are actually no neuro-ophthalmologists in Maine, which is where I live, or in New Hampshire, which is right next door. And the closest facility for me to be seen at was Mass Eye and Ear down in Boston, Massachusetts. So this referral was put in over 6 months ago, and I quickly heard back from them and got my appointment. And I've been waiting for this appointment for over 6 months, and it is finally here. I am so excited for tomorrow. I am so nervous for tomorrow, but I've got this, and I'm excited to see what they have to say. I'm excited to hear what they think is going on. I'm excited to see what they have planned, if we're doing surgery to see if my eyesight comes back, or if we're gonna try medications, or what we're gonna do. But everyone has assured me Boston is the place to be for something like this, so I am really looking forward to it. We are taking the train down, which is exciting, and now that I've gone on and on, I will see you guys tomorrow. I'm going to do my best to try to document a bunch for you. Obviously, I probably can't document the appointment, but I will document before, after the travel, and I will sit down for an update after, and I will see you guys then. Today is October 10th of 2024, and yesterday was a really big day for me because I finally made it to Boston after waiting over 6 months for this appointment, and I figured that now would be the perfect time to sit down and talk to you about it. Before I go ahead and do any more talking, I do want to go ahead and roll the clips of the travel to Boston from Portland, Maine. I documented that over on my TikTok, and we'll just go ahead and insert those clips now. Come travel with me from Portland, Maine down to Boston, Massachusetts for an appointment at Mass Eye and Ear that I have been waiting over 6 months for. The morning started off super early at 7 a.m. so we could make it to the train station and get on the Amtrak, which would take us directly to North Station in Boston. This was my first time ever going on a train and I absolutely loved it, other than the fact that I get super motion sick and was definitely sick on the ride there. We were super lucky and we were able to find seats that fit 3 of us, and I was really impressed with how much legroom we had sitting across from one another. And let me tell you, the views from the train were absolutely spectacular, especially since the sun was just coming up. And of course, I did have to bring my emotional support raccoon, Cheeto, because he literally comes to every single appointment with me. Something really cool is that they have a cafe car, and I ended up getting half of an everything bagel that I split with my mom, and it was really good. And in case you were wondering, this is just what the train looked like while we were on it. And I obviously had to check out the bathroom. I was actually really impressed with how much space it had, and it was also super clean. And again, we had some more great view. This is the point where I really started feeling sick, so I put on my googly goggles that are supposed to help with motion sickness, and they definitely did. And then after around 2.5 hours of travel, we finally made it into the city, and it had the most pretty view I think I've ever seen. And let me tell you, the amount of bridges they have is insane here. Once we got off the train, we went into North Station and mapped out how we were going to get to the hospital, and we decided the easiest way would be to walk, and it only ended up taking us about 15 minutes once we figured out where we were actually going. Once we got there, I had to go ahead and head up to floor 9, and I actually ended up having a panic attack in this elevator because so many people ended up piling into it with us once we got to the 2nd floor, and it also went super duper fast. Then I finally arrived at the correct office. I checked in, and then I had to wait. The first thing they did was check my pressures, and then they went ahead and sent me upstairs to have OCT testing done, which basically is just detailed imaging of your optic nerve. And a huge shout out to the tech who actually let me take pictures so that I could go ahead and show you all. After a bunch of testing, I did meet with my doctor once again, and I did get my diagnosis. Then it was time to make the trip back home, and again, we did decide that we were going to walk back to the train station, only this time it was a lot more scenic than the time before, because this time we decided we were going to follow a new route. I absolutely loved looking at all these plants. They are so pretty and colorful. And if you ever see leaves like this, be careful because they are very slippery. Something I actually collect is these pressed pennies, and they had some inside the train station. We also went into the Pro Store for the Boston Celtics and Boston Bruins. I couldn't decide if I wanted to get one of these cute hats or if I wanted to get one of these cute little bears, and I ultimately decided to go with the bear. And after my cousin who works in the area actually surprised me for a minute, and at this point we were back at North Station, and we stood in front of this board to figure out what track we were going to be on forever. And then it was time to finally get on and make our way home. And since it was sunset, it was super pretty. At this point, I had a migraine. I was super tired and super grouchy. And after 2.5 hours, we finally arrived back home. And I am so glad that we finally have answers. So that is just how traveling went. It went pretty smooth. So now that you've seen the travel to Mass Eye in here, let's talk about my actual appointment. Starting off, once I got there, I obviously checked in and then had to wait. And what's really cool is that in the waiting room, they actually have someone who comes by with a cart full of books in case anyone is interested in grabbing one, and you do get to go ahead and keep them. And then once my name was called, I went with a tech and I went and did the Humphrey's visual field test, which is one I've explained on here before. It's basically you look in this big globe thing, you have one eye covered, and then with the other eye you have to hold a button and press it when you see the light in a certain quadrant. And it's something I've done a lot, and it just measures your visual field and where you can and cannot see. This one was a little different because they actually have you look through a monocle of your prescription, which I've never had to do before. I didn't notice a difference whether I could see better or not with the lens, but I thought it was interesting that they do that. After my visual field test, I did have to go back out to the waiting room for a few minutes to wait, and then the doctor came and grabbed me, which I thought was interesting because normally a tech comes and grabs you and rooms you. However, here the actual provider comes out and gets you and brings you to a room. Obviously, when I got in the room, I sat in that fancy eye chair and we just sat and talked about my medical history. After that, he began working on my eyes and he started with putting those yellow numbing drops in your eyes that allow them to measure the pressure in your eyes, and both of my pressures are really good. And after that, he performed a new test for me. It was very similar to the Humphrey's visual field, however, to me it was like a more manual version, and the globe was definitely a lot bigger, and the provider does all these markings and it just shows where your cross fields are and what you can and cannot see. And I think this is the test that ultimately helped guide him into giving me a diagnosis, and this test was called the Goldmann Perimetry test. After the perimetry test, he went ahead and dilated my eyes. After I got my eyes dilated, I went up a few floors where I had something called OCT imaging done. And OCT stands for Optical Coherence Tomography. And basically with this, they take high resolution cross-sectional images of your eye and it lets them see your optic nerve really clearly so that they can see if anything is wrong. And the good thing that came out of that is that both of my optic nerves are completely healthy, which is amazing. After the OCT testing, I went back down a few floors to the original office I was at, checked in again, and then had to wait. And eventually the doctor came back and got me, and I ended up with my diagnosis. And basically he said that there is nothing wrong structurally. This is not related to the pituitary tumor in any way, shape, or form, and that structurally everything is intact other than the fact that I have inorganic vision loss, which basically just means there's nothing directly causing this, such as a damaged optic nerve. And inorganic vision loss is actually a form of FND, which stands for functional neurological disorder, which was my ultimate diagnosis. And because the neuro-ophthalmologist I saw doesn't specialize in FND, he did go ahead and give me a referral to see one of his colleagues who actually does specialize in it. So I'm not sure if that will happen due to insurance and having to travel back down there, but if it does, you guys will hear about it and see the documentation. But as of right now, we are unsure of whether it's going to happen or not. And ultimately, his recommendations are for me to be seen here in Maine every year, especially because I have the history of the pituitary adenoma. He said while it's not an issue now, it could very well grow in the future, and so he wants me to have visual field testing done annually as well as an annual comprehensive eye exam. So I am hoping that I can stick with my current provider up here in Maine because I absolutely love her. She's been amazing through all this, and I do not have any follow-ups down at Mass Eye and Ear other than the referral. And now we're gonna get into my thoughts about this diagnosis, and I took it really good when he told me. However, now that I've gotten home, I've definitely cried about it and sat and thought and did some research. I took a ton of psychology courses in college, and I am part of the chronic illness world, and FND is something I am well aware of. And let me say that FND gets a really bad rap, and there is this really negative stigma around it. But I want you to know that FND shouldn't define your life, and that it's okay to have FND, and it's not all in your head. Am I upset about this diagnosis? I would say a little, only for the simple fact that I was really hoping that there was a chance that there was something structurally wrong, but that they could fix it so that I could see again. However, that's not the case. Everything is structurally intact, and so the most frustrating part is that there is just miscommunication in my brain going on right now. And so because of that, I have to have the label of FND. And when you tell people you have FND, they basically look at you like you're crazy in that it's all in your head. And while it is all in your head, it's not being made up in your head, if that makes any sense. And that is my update for you guys, and that is where I'm at right now. Like I said, I'm filming this intro and outro the day before I go, so I am crossing my fingers and hoping the appointment went well. Obviously, if it didn't, you guys heard about it, and we will do what we have to do to get me in a better spot. If you guys like this video and would like me to continue documenting my journey, definitely let me know in the comments down below. While you guys are down there, be sure sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I upload new content regularly and would love it if you'd become part of our little family. Also be sure to hit the bell so that you are in fact notified every time I do upload a new video. I hope you guys like this video and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys!